An individual is not deceased if you still speak of their name. An individual isn't absent if you still do things in memory of them. And a loss does not mean that something is gone, but in fact, something is present. When we experience loss, we can experience emotions of depression, anguish, anxiety, but it can also help us to strengthen our purpose. In addition to strengthening our purpose, loss is ambiguous. So what does ambiguous mean? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't know what's going to happen in a month. And I certainly don't know what's going to happen with COVID-19. What I do know, though, is that COVID-19 is an ambiguous loss. An ambiguous loss is a loss without certainty, without clarity, and we don't get all of our questions answered. Dr. Pauline Boss has been working on this theory and this approach for several decades. A loss is something that is out of our control. In regards to ambiguous loss, there are two types of losses. The first type is when somebody is physically absent and psychologically present. When an individual is physically absent and psychologically present, they are no longer physically there with you in the way that they used to be, but you continue to remember them and who they were. An example that I can give you is if somebody is kidnapped. If a child is kidnapped, they are no longer physically here in the way that they used to be. However, you continue to remember them, the memories that you had with them, and what you'll always remember about them. Other examples of this type of loss include if somebody is deceased and also if somebody is going through a divorce. The second type of ambiguous loss occurs when an individual is physically present but psychologically absent. An example that I can give you guys is I used to work with individuals who had dementia. So we would focus on celebrating our holidays, memorials, activities. They were physically there, but due to the external cause of the dementia, they may not have remembered where they were, they may not have remembered my name, or they may not have remembered what they were doing. Although they were physically present, they were psychologically absent. Now I'm going to give you guys an example I think that we all can relate to at some time. So I get excited to be able to go out and hang out with my friends. We'll maybe catch up every few months, go to a restaurant. So we're meeting up, we're excited, we all have our orders ready, but then we're all sitting there at the restaurant and everybody's like this. Everybody is staring at their phone. They're going on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Bumble, all of these apps. They're not focused on our conversation or being with us. They're more focused on the photo that they're going to edit and that they're going to put on Instagram later. They are physically present with me, but part of them is psychologically absent. Another type of ambiguous loss is COVID-19. COVID-19 correlates to ambiguous loss. The first type is when an individual is physically absent and psychologically present. When an individual is physically absent, this could occur when an individual has died due to symptoms of COVID-19. They are no longer physically here. However, you continue to remember them and who they were and who they are and how your life is influenced by them. The other type of loss, when somebody is physically present and psychologically absent, this relates to COVID-19 as well too. In terms of COVID-19, we have had several rules and mandates. We've had to wear masks, social distance. We've had to limit holidays and celebrations and spending time with our family. Due to this has impacted and correlated to our mental health. We have experienced increased depression, sadness, loneliness. We are not the same people that we were prior to COVID-19. We are still physically here, but we are psychologically absent. Now remember, with ambiguous loss, you need to be able to hold opposing ideas at the same time and know that someone or an event can be both present and absent. Although there's ambiguous loss, there are a few things that can help us. One of them is being able to adjust mastery, identifying resilience, and knowing your psychological family. Now, a psychological family is different than a biological family. When we think of a biological family, we're talking about people who are blood related and have our same DNA. This is typically somebody who's on any medical or legal documents. So this could be a biological sister, this could be a biological parent, or a biological child. But remember, a psychological family is not like a biological family. A psychological family does not have to be blood related or have the same DNA. You get to pick your family. So this could be your best friend, this could be your neighbor, this could be a coworker, this could be a priest, this can even be your pet. Whoever is your support throughout this time, you get to choose them to be a part of your psychological family, and these are the individuals who support you. In regards to ambiguous loss, having this psychological support is very important. Something else that impacts our ability in regards to ambiguous loss is we live in a mastery-based society. We love desire and control. We want to know what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and how it's going to happen. And not only do we want to know how it's going to happen, but we want it to happen our way. And if it doesn't, we get very upset. Let me give you an example. In regards to a mastery-based culture, I went on Facebook the other day and I saw this face mask. And it said it's going to make my skin baby soft overnight and I'm going to look glowing. I was like, okay, perfect, I'm going to get this. And I'm going to order it off of my favorite website, which is Amazon. But I have a big problem here, guys. I'm checking out on Amazon, and I have 3 options. I could wait 5 days for the mask. I could also wait 2 days, or I can get it overnight. Let's be real here. I'm going to get it overnight because that's what's convenient for me. I don't care how. I want it now. In addition to wanting mastery in regards to ambiguous loss, we also desire mastery in terms of our emotions. Society loves emotions of positivity, confidence, and happiness. We'll see books on 10 ways to feel confident or how to feel beautiful overnight, just like with that mask that I'm going to order. But we don't necessarily see books or emotions on the importance of feeling depression and sadness, and how loss can actually help you to be resilient, and how going through depression can help you to increase your purpose. These are things we don't talk about in society. An example that I can give you is through COVID-19. We have unrealistic expectations on ourselves in regards to emotions. So for those of you who did lose someone due to COVID-19, you may have gotten 3 days bereavement. So from my understanding, that means you have 3 days to plan the memorial, plan the funeral, plan the mass, grieve with your family, and complete all of the end-of-life documents. But on that 4th day, I want you to be able to come back and work it in the way that you did before. When in reality, you're just starting to feel the numbness and denial. Society puts unrealistic expectations on our feelings and how we cope with things. So in regards to ambiguous loss, how do we help people who live in a mastery-based society? Well, first of all, we need to be able to understand how much mastery does this person have. Is this somebody who's more laissez-faire and relaxed? And do they understand that death is a part of life? Or is this somebody who's more fixated on having every day planned by the hour, and if it doesn't go this way, they may have an anxiety attack? You need to know how much mastery you have and how that impacts your ability to cope. Now, with ambiguous loss, there is also a paradox. We want to be able to master our inability to have mastery. So what we're saying here is we need to know and acknowledge that ambiguous loss in life, this is something that's out of our control. However, there are some things regarding our future that we can have control over. So some of this can include scheduling activities. So for me, that means when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to make my strawberry banana smoothie. And when I come home from work, I'm going to engage in meditation and hanging out with my dog. These things, having some increased control, can actually help you to feel increased confidence regarding your loss. You can also gain increased mastery by being able to meditate, pray, educate yourself on the loss, schedule time with your family, but most importantly, schedule time with yourself. All of these things can help you to stay resilient. Resilience is the ability to regain energy after adversity drains it by bouncing back. Resilience is something that takes time, and when there is no cure to a solution, the goal is to build enough resilience to be able to get by. In regard to resilience, resilience also depends on the individual's ability to be able to live uncomfortably with the loss. One way to be resilient is to be able to express your emotions. So when you're going through loss and when you're going through difficulty, it's important to be able to express how you're feeling. So whether that's talking to a friend, whether that's talking to a counselor, writing down your emotions, journaling, crying, doing what you need to do to express how you're feeling. People can also stay resilient by being able to educate themselves on the loss. In terms of COVID-19, I'm not going to know what's going to happen in a month, and I certainly don't know what's going to happen within a year. But what I do know is I can stay up to date on facts, and I can keep myself and my family educated and safe. I can also stay resilient by being able to advocate for my needs. So contacting legislator or Senate, doing what I need to do to advocate for myself. Now, all of these ideas sound great to be resilient, right? But I think it's also important to understand that resilience doesn't always mean that we have to be going. We also need to be taking care of ourselves. So resilience is coming home from work, watching Netflix, hanging out with our dog or pet, because in order to be resilient, we need to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves. Another way to be resilient is to understand that loss isn't just bad. When we think of loss, we think of depression, we think of anger, anguish, stress. We need to understand that instead of viewing COVID-19 and ambiguous loss as all bad, there are good outcomes. And it is okay to be feeling opposing emotions at the same time, such as joy and pain. In regards to ambiguous loss, nothing is all bad, and we can't view things that way. Within viewing and talking about COVID-19 and ambiguous loss, there are good outcomes. And it is okay to be feeling opposing emotions at the same time. In regards to ambiguous loss, it's also important that you continue to express your emotions and make meaning. So how do we make meaning out of a situation that just doesn't make sense? People can make meaning through a variety of ways. People make meaning through being able to do something in memoriam of their loved one, start an agency, do a walk for them, but make sure that their loved one is continuously remembered. So in regards to ambiguous loss, in your own journey, what have you learned? And how have you grown? Examples that have been told to me are we need to cherish the time that we have and cherish the time that we have with those that we love. Life goes on, and we need to take our own initiative for our happiness and not depend on anybody else. We don't have control over how much time we have, and we need to cherish the time that we do have here. We've also learned that we're not going to get closure. When we think of closure, this aligns with our idea of a mastery-based society. We don't want to be feeling any more pain, we want to get over the loss. But this is not the goal with ambiguous loss. The goal isn't to stop feeling pain or move past this or get over this. This is a loss that has happened to you and is going to be a part of your life. We cannot get closure on ambiguous loss. The only thing we're going to get closure on is a real estate deal. In regards to closure, when you have experienced your loss, it's important to reflect on how your loved one is still in your life and ways you continue to remember them. We're not going to know how a holiday is without them or what we can do to continue to remember them. In regards to ambiguous loss, the goal for closure is to not need closure. It's also important to be able to understand that in the hope of ambiguous loss, you're going to be able to accept both absence and presence. It's important because ambiguous loss is confusing. And how do we understand and know that an individual is both absent and present? Remember to keep your loved one in your memory and understand how they continue to influence you. Spend time in memorializing them and recognize how you've grown. Remember, the individual is both present and absent. This can help you to make meaning. It is also important in ambiguous loss to be able to understand and remember that this is something that stays with us and we can continue to grow resilient. In terms of ambiguous loss, you cannot change what has happened to you, but you can change the way you've seen your ambiguous loss.